I think this is the third day in a row we have to talk about the NFL's COOF policy because it keeps evolving. Like, originally they just had a two-tiered system where they treated unvaccinated people like they were just absolutely abhorrent monsters to society and made them jump through various hoops in order to just be around. But now they've evolved it to a point where now it's going to be affecting their team. So why don't they just go ahead and we're probably just a couple days off on that, if I can be completely honest, but of just, fully just saying you cannot play in the NFL if you don't get the jab. But it feels like they're going to be the corporation, or they're going to be the entity that's going to be out there to see how far they can push their employees before they have to just drop the hammer fully and be like some of our other neighbors across the ocean in places like France and Israel and Italy, who we will get to very shortly. But as you can see with the headline here, NFL define unvaccinated players for COVID protocol violations, because it wasn't enough to just force the coaches and the administration to have to get the jab, which led to the first casualty of this policy with Coach Dennison of, formerly of the Minnesota Vikings. But now it's going to start fining teams for their players if they don't want to get the jab. So what's the point of just holding back at this point? Because for all intents and purposes, you've just taken the responsibility off the individual, and now you've started to attack their team, the entire reason that they're there. Like we said yesterday, it's using this strange appeal to people's propensity to care for those around them. Okay, it wasn't enough to just impose individual sanctions. Now you're starting to affect everybody else. And DeAndre Hopkins, Leonard Fournette, Jalen Ramsey all came out and said, I don't care what you want to do with your body, just don't tell me what to do. But then at the same time, you're going to start dropping all of these restrictions on us. I don't want to be affecting my team, and this right here affects the bottom line. Let's get into it. The NFL will pay very close attention to whether unvaccinated players follow COVID protocols this season, and if they don't, the players could end up paying the league, according to another in a series of recent and aggressive new restrictions targeting unvaccinated players. The NFL announced on Saturday that if a player violates one of the league-mandated COVID protocols, that applies to unvaccinated players, but not vaccinated players. So if they manage to get one of these non-existent breakout cases, which the president tells you that it's absolute impossibility, but the science and the numbers out there would tell you that it's totally something that can happen. So I don't know who to believe, the most popular man walking the face of the earth right now, or my own lying eyes. I don't know. The NFL announced that they will receive a $14,650 fine. What did they just pull numbers out of a fucking hat? The new league penalty comes on the heels of other restrictions announced this week, in which the league said that if the COVID outbreak among unvaccinated players caused the game to be canceled, players from from either team would not be paid. So even if your team has to forfeit the game, the other team would also be affected and they wouldn't be paid. And now on top of that, they're going to be fining players who aren't vaccinated who end up running afoul of these draconian policies. How is this not a vaccine mandate at this point? Well, I can see why they aren't going to just come out and forthrightly say it, because, this kind of just follows a pattern. You just walk up to somebody who you're trying to encroach on their space, you take it one step at a time until they protest, and then you just step back a little bit, and then you wait, give it enough time. Apparently for the NFL's timeline, it's just an entire day, and then they'll just come forward and they'll just keep pushing you back and back until you find your heels on the edge of a cliff. And unfortunately, the other countries around the world, they just decided to fucking break the door open and then just, here, vaccine passports. We need them now, okay? Go out there, get the jab. Otherwise, you can't use public transportation. You can't be traveling on any sort of aircraft. You can't be going to restaurants. You can't be going to theaters. You can't be going to any sort of entertainment venue. You have to show your papers. That's how strict they are. And Australia, it was once heralded as being the model. Oh, we could have got over the COOF so much quicker if we would have just followed the Australian model. Yes, the tiny, mostly unpopulated country in the middle of the fucking ocean. Yes, if we were all like that, we could have definitely just locked down the entire country for months at a time. And then whenever one case pops up, they just lock down an entire state for a couple of weeks until that one case passes. That definitely sounds like a great fucking idea. But now you're starting to get people to be a little bit more leery of the government encroachment. Took them fucking long enough. They were locked down, how many times? At least 3 times, I seem to remember. And one of the largest states right now, one of the largest cities, Melbourne, is currently right in the midst of another one of those circuit breaker lockdowns. Like Australia, I gave you credit for walking back different investments from the CCP, but what the fuck are you doing here? You're just following the playbook of the CCP. It's one of those things where, oh yeah, they can't really buy into our docks and our ports anymore. Meanwhile, they have their tendrils in everywhere else. We'll just do a little bit of this because we got countries on countries on countries to cover. Thousands of Australians are fed up with COVID-19 lockdowns, marched in Sydney and Melbourne on Saturday as part of the worldwide Rally for Freedom protests. Australians gathered in the thousands at inner Sydney, Victoria Park, before marching to Town Hall in the Central Business District, escorted by heavy police presence, which included mounted police and riot officers. Yeah, wow. Holy shit, that is quite a frickin' turnout. NSW police said it recognized and supported the rights of free speech and peaceful assembly, but the protests was a breach of public health orders. You're going to find that to be a common thread to be running through all of these different protests. The Germans, known for their peace and good policies as well, went out there, similarly marched as well, and oh yeah, this is where we're going to start to see some police brutality in full force, okay? Now, just because I stick up for cops in certain situations doesn't mean I have a blanket case where I think that either all cops are bastards or that all cops are great. No. Individual cop, individual example. That's how I'm going to judge these people. That's how I judge everybody. So you've had protests like this for a while in Berlin. This is a picture captured in April, but yeah, they're still going on at the same time. They're going to be happening in Britain soon as well because vaccine passports are coming in the fall, according to Boris Johnson, who is still a conservative, if you remember that. But we'll see if that pushes them to the breaking point, because they also had these freedom rallies at about the same time, and the streets were fucking packed, and London and some of the other larger cities as well. So we're going to see if they're going to follow through on that promise. So now Israel, another one of those cases when everything was going live between them and Palestine most recently. Yeah, I found myself on the Jewish side of things. And once again, this is another one of those situations where I'm not simping for the state. Never, ever, ever get that fucking twisted. It's for the Jewish people, the Israelis that are there. That's who I feel for in this situation, not the fucking people pulling the strings. You have a screw loose if you want to hold elected office, and more often than not, you can probably count on one hand the amount of elected officials in the fucking world that are really worth a damn. Otherwise, yeah, you just get authoritarians from both sides of the extreme, both sides of just the aisle rather, and they all just act the same. They just have a different letter, or they have a different designation at the end of their name. Whoop-de-fucking-do. Because Israel to impose vaccine passports for many events, and this is now that they have that weird kind of coalition government that you take turns being the prime minister. It's fucking weird. That's what happens when you have some kind of a parliamentary government. It's just garbage because it just ends up being a tyranny of the minority and then just appealing to the worst aspects of the majority in order to try to get some sort of a coalition. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. It's not to stray too far into something we're going to be talking about in videos coming up for the rest of the day. It's trying to appeal to the normies, the low information people, and once again, that's not to be a denigrative statement. It's just people who have other things to do and they don't really pay attention to the seemingly too large events that are going on. They just look at government and the procedures as just being too high of a bar of entry to really dive deep into. And then it's left up to commentators, pundits, whatever you want to call them out there, to parse out the information and deliver it effectively. But when you sacrifice your base in order to appeal to the silent majority that's out there, you're never going to figure out an effective way to reach these people, okay? Because they don't tell you what they want, they don't tell you enough to really form an opinion on, and also at the same time, some of the best minds and one of the biggest industries in the world is marketing. Now, if you think of it that way, if you take a look, if you just follow the money a little bit, you realize because it is one of the biggest industries in the world, why would they want to find a solution to it? Okay? It's just like finding a cure for cancer. It's probably never going to happen, even though it has some of the brightest minds in the world. The industry behind trying to find a cure for cancer is far more profitable than actually solving cancer. And that's what you have here with marketing, okay? Because if it was just as simple as, I don't know, some 10 with a big old set of tits just holding whatever you need to market, if it was that easy, we would have discovered it fucking decades ago, okay? But no, it's not just that simple. So trying to appeal to normies out there instead of just trying to appeal to your vocal base, all you're going to do is just piss off your supporters in order to go chase the dragon effectively. But to be back on topic, Prime Minister Naftali Bennett announced in a statement on Thursday that as of August 8th, okay, those who refuse vaccines will not be able to go to the cinema, theater, the synagogue. Oh, wow. Wow. Not be able to go to church. That's cool. The amusement park, the soccer game, or any activity over 100 people indoors or out unless they bring negative results from the coronavirus test at their expense. Yeah, and these fucking tests aren't going to be free anymore, so for all intents and purposes, they're either going to try to nickel and dime you. Also, they don't have to forcibly mandate vaccines. Yes, they will fully bear the cost of the test, he reiterated, adding that people who have carried out their civic duty and have been vaccinated. See the language that's being presented here? Oh, it's your civic duty. You're doing the best for your common man. You're just being a good member of society. It's just like saluting the flag or standing up for the national anthem. Getting the jab is now as Israeli as a yarmulke, a dreidel, or an overbearing bitching mother. So yeah, I fully expect there to be some protests or, I don't know, some more rocks to be thrown in Israel, because this is not popular. Nobody except for the Twitterati and the elites out there really want vaccine passports. And to be honest, the hottest place and where this is happening right now on the largest scale is France. And that's why we saved it for last. And this is from what would, I think, be a leftist French source based on the language being used here and the misreporting of the situation. Anti-vaxxers, yellow vests, and Macron critics protest across France. No, it's much more than just that. Demonstrations against Health Pass brought together more than 15,000 people in the South France, in the cities of Marseille, France, and Montpellier, to cries of freedom, while protesters in Paris clash with police. Remember, this is from today, and this is reporting on what's happening right now, but only 15,000 people, and they're all of these far-right, wacky weirdos that are just against Macron, and he's just trying to save society, right? French anti-riot police fired tear gas, and clashes broke out during protests in central Paris against COVID-19 curbs and vaccinations. Yeah, they already have vaccine passports. That was announced a few days ago. I think we talked about it, but yeah, that's the entire auspices of this as well. Television pictures showed police trying to push back demonstrators near Paris, Gare, Saint Laurez railway station after the protesters pushed over a police motorbike carrying several officers. Yeah, like it says here, Marseille protests, procession of 4,300 people marched through the center of the city. And then in Nice, 6,000 people caused huge traffic jams. The marchers included anti-vaccine campaigners, so-called yellow vests, and opponents of Macron, all of whom marched under the same slogan, freedom. And the yellow vests, they've been out there for a long old fucking time. And that was the popular group, right? Because they were wearing the safety vests. They were out there protesting the tyrannical regime of Emmanuel Macron at the time, before he started to look and be like, hey, you know how I can get popular going into another election? Let's take on Islamofascism, okay? God, there sure seems to be a lot of knife attacks, guns attacks, and they all seem to be generating from one consistent place. So let's go hard on that one. Maybe everybody will just ignore all of the other terrible atrocities of my current regime. But yeah, these guys were out there, and there were pictures and there was coverage of them. They were getting water cannoned in the middle of the street. Nobody seemed to care, but they were just far-right nut jobs, right? Oh, they didn't number that many, and you can always just hand wave them away because they're all just crazy people, right? But then you get CBS, okay? Maybe more center-right-ish. Or, I'm sorry, center-left-ish. There's nothing right about them. To just a little bit more neutral than what that previous source was, but it's still not great. Some 160,000 people. That's a big old discrepancy. There's no pictures on this page, but we still got another article to take a look at as well. Protesters march against vaccine mandates and passes. Oh, no shit. Including far-right activists of the 160,000 people. You can see the phrasing here as well, okay? They say, including far-right activists, because, okay, they want to tell you that, it's been taken over by just these agitators, but at the same time, there's not that many people out there. Not all French people decide that they want to be against the vaccine passports, but they're there, so you should still be scared of them. Whatever, bro. protested Saturday against the country against a bill requiring everyone to have special virus pass to enter restaurants. Oh, just restaurants. No. The list was far more extensive than that. Similar protests were being held in neighboring Italy. Police fired water cannons and tear gas at rowdy protesters in Paris, although most gatherings were orderly. Let's take a look at some of these protests as well. As you can see, yeah, it was mostly peaceful. People had their fucking hands up. Until the police decided that, yeah, it's time to fire up the water cannons. I show these fuckers who are our boss. We will try and wash the virus off of them in order to keep everyone safe. I think that's how you use water cannons, right? Tens of thousands of people have taken to the streets in French cities for the second weekend in a row to protest against health passes and mandatory vaccinations for medics. That's another thing as well. I don't know if we touched on this as well, but yeah, in accordance with also shutting down all entertainment, all places of worship, restaurants, public transportation, air transportation as well. Healthcare workers have to get the jab. Nurses, doctors, surgeons, anybody who works in the healthcare industry has to get the jab. No questions asked, otherwise you lose your job. So they started there, okay? That's what these people are against. Law enforcement officers in the French capital used tear gas and water cannons to disperse crowds as the situation on the street spiraled out of control during the massive demonstrations provoked by the government's plans to extend health passes, for public places and enforce mandatory vaccinations for certain jobs, including healthcare workers. Videos published on social media showed a crowd of angry young people forcing police officers to retreat from the Champs-Élysées by blocking the road, pelting officers with various objects, and even attacking police fans. Yeah, sucks to suck. You shouldn't be enforcing health procedures like this. I have no sympathy for the police officers who show up and enforce this type of insanity. Like, yeah, if you're there to stop a riot, that's one thing. But then at the same time, if these guys are out here to show their displeasure from, I don't know, having whatever's left of their freedom, especially in France, revoked, all because they don't want to play pincushion for the government, I got problems with that. And if this is how they show displeasure, if this is how you get things accomplished, fine, fuck it. I don't care at this point. I don't want to be falling down this fucking hellhole. I don't want to be falling down this spiral, okay? Because other places around the world, this is how it started, right? Because where did the lockdowns come from? Everybody went through a fucking lockdown except for Sweden and a couple of other little remote countries as well. But it all started because that's what China did, okay? China did that to begin with, and they started welding doors shut, and then everybody else around the world, because they don't have an original thought in their own fucking head, they just took a look and said, oh, that's how you deal with this stuff? Oh, it came from there? So yeah, we should probably just, follow the fucking lead. And it has ruined economies around the world. Perhaps was it planned? I don't know. That's another topic for another time. In fact, I do know, and yes, that is exactly what they're doing. Anyways, now what's happening around the world? Well, vaccine passports, some way or another, or forced vaccinations are happening. And we're seeing how it's playing out right now, okay? And we're seeing out that the population, if you don't take steps in order to see how far you can push the public, if you just decide to crank that knob up a little bit too much, it looks like if you're going to be trying to use the old slowly boil something, and it's unfortunate that we're talking about France right now, but if you're trying to boil the frog in the water, you turn it up by degrees. You don't just slam the knob, otherwise he pops out of the pot, right? And that's unfortunately what Italy, France, Israel, that's what they did. But the NFL right now, they're just turning it up by degrees, okay? And you got to believe, because yesterday, Valerie Jarrett's very well aware of what the NFL is doing, okay? And she still has the ear of a lot of those people that are still in the White House, okay? So obviously, if she's paying attention to it, other people in the White House are paying attention to that. So they're going to see how much they can get away with the NFL before they start to drop their own policies, because I don't know if this was ever the intention from the beginning, okay? I'll at least give them the benefit of the doubt, okay? When the coup started at the outset of 2020, now we're 18 months into this horseshit? Like, it was just a convenient way to pin a whole bunch of blame, the world's blame, on Trump in order to just get him out of the way. And then once the vaccine started to come out and it looked like things were starting to turn around, the authoritarians in charge started to realize that, oh fuck, all of our power is going to be disappearing. What are we going to have to do in order to maintain that? Because this rush of telling people what to do at all times, it's really disappearing. So what did they start to do? Well, they started to campaign that you have to get the jab. okay? They started to tell you to wear your mask everywhere on federal ground. And then as soon as some governors started to recoil from that, and it's like, this is kind of a scary slope. Not in my state. That's not going to be happening here. Then they started to double down harder, okay? You're going to have to do this. Don't mind any of those breakthrough cases. Nope, we're not going to be reporting any of that anymore. You still have to get the jab, okay? You should still be wearing your mask, okay? Your kids in schools, regardless, because they're not old enough to get the jab, they're going to have to wear the mask all the time. Don't look at any of the numbers. You just follow the science. And if you manage to get any of that sort of renegade information or whatever they're going to call it, they're going to start fucking hammering it down, okay? What are they doing? What's the White House doing? Flagging posts on Facebook for disinformation. They're flagging them for Facebook, okay? And they're looking at deplatforming somebody. If they hit the terms of service up at one place, they want them completely and utterly taken off the internet. And you can see exactly where they're focusing right now. White House calls YouTube, Facebook, judge, jury, executioner on bad COVID information. Yeah, because they're working hand in hand. Obviously, that's plain as day if we're being fair to this. But now that they're putting YouTube in there, yeah, it's the second largest website on all of the internet, which is just preposterous to think about. But yeah, a lot of opinions are out there. Most of them, that run contrary to the narrative kind of get destroyed off platform. So there's only certain topics and certain code words that you have to use in order to get your message across. And even still, that's not going to be good enough, okay? So the fact that they start naming YouTube by name, yep, time's coming up. The White House has YouTube, not just Facebook, on its list of social media platforms that officials say are responsible for an alarming spread of misinformation about COVID vaccines and are not doing enough to stop it. Sources familiar with the administration's thinking said. That's a very vague designation. The criticism comes a week after President Biden called Facebook and other social media companies killers for failing to slow the spread of misinformation about vaccines. Because, yeah, we're all about vaccines at this point. Don't look at the actual caseload or any of the other numbers that are out there. Just listen to those paid shills that say you have to get the jab and, hospitals are being overrun right now. Sure, bro. Just go down to your local hospital if you're really, really, really bored, and then just see how overrun they are right now. Hilarious. Senior administration officials said one key problem is inconsistent enforcement. I agree, but not for the reasons you're going to be bringing up. YouTube, a unit of Alphabet's Google, yes, obviously, and Facebook get to decide what qualifies as misinformation on their platforms, but the results have left the White House unhappy. Why? Because there's some dissenting thinking out there. There's a couple of contrary opinions that you just don't like, that you just wish you could squash out. Just make a couple of phone calls, and I'm sure that you can get some things done. I'd imagine some changes are probably going to come by the end of next week, so don't worry about it. Because more lockdowns and more enforcement is going to be ramping up very shortly. If not by the end of summer, by the end of fall, you'll have cities in some states reinforcing different mandates. You just watch. Facebook and YouTube are judge, jury, and executioner when it comes to going on their platforms, an administration official said, describing their approach to COVID misinformation. They get to grade their own homework. Interesting. Some of the main pieces of vaccine misinformation the Biden administration is fighting include COVID vaccines are something and something else. I'm not going to bother reading that because even though I just barely broach those topics and there's, evidence out there to suggest that there's certain things that kind of reinforce those claims. If I say that, I end up finding the latter part to the judge, jury, and executioner branding. But yeah, it's all just been one step at a time, just turning that knob just up by 1 degree. Rest of the world is starting to fight back. I don't know when Canada and the United States are, but I feel it's fast approaching, and I can't even prognosticate the future on this one because I really don't know. I don't know how this is going to play out, but stay tuned, I guess. With that said, I thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.